Hey, hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Healthy Waves, the podcast where we dive deep into the sea of ideas, expert insights, transformative discussions, and many more. So, I'm your host, Avik, and today we explore the realms of mental health, personal growth, business strategies, and everything in between. So, this is not just an kind of another conversation, it's all about the dynamic and interactive experience where we bring it. Experts from the diverse fields to share their wisdom, the strategies for living a healthy, balanced, and the successful life. So, get ready to ride the waves of knowledge and the inspiration as we journey together towards a healthier and happier you. So, we have two amazing guests with us today, Rob and Amber. So, both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for
Lovely.
having me. I'm excited.
Lovely, great. So, Rob and Amber, before we start, I would quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. I'll start with Rob. So, dear listeners, today we are definitely thrilled to have Rob with us, a powerhouse coach, I will say, and the speaker who specializes in helping uh, driven entrepreneurs break through the stagnation and achieve the holistic success. So he's the founder of Prime Performance Coaching, where he integrates the physical, mental, emotional strategies to foster the resilience, clarity, and the peak performance. So his mission is to guide entrepreneurs to not to just survive but also thrive in their personal and the professional lives by um, avoiding the burnout and creating a sustainable path to the success. So get ready for some actionable insights and transformative strategies that will help you elevate both in your life and the business. So welcome to the show again, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you. This is going to be exciting. I'm ready to dive in.
Lovely, lovely. And dear listeners, on the other hand, we have Amber Furiman. So we are also honored to have Amber with us today. Amber is a recovering perfectionist, serial accomplisher, and a true success architect. So she is an attorney, author, podcaster, and NLP master coach with a unique passion for helping the professionals design their best lives and have the courage to live them. Yes. So she is the author of Break Your Bullshit Box. So where she uncovers the excuses that holds us back and teaches us how to break free from them. That's really amazing, right? So Amber's journey from tying her identity to accomplishments to pushing beyond her comfort zone has given her a profound insights into uh, what it takes to achieve the real success. So we are excited to learn from her experiences and the strategies. So why to wait? Welcome to the show again, Amber.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Great, great. So, Amber and Rob, I'm really very happy to have you on the show, and it's all about the discussions. And today, the topic is very great, where we'll be talking about the burnout, which is very, very common situations now. So, I'll start with Rob. Like, Rob, you have dedicated your career to helping the entrepreneurs break through from the stagnation and the avoid burnout. So, if you could share a personal story of a time when you faced the burnout and what took you to overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. I think, like many people who are experiencing burnout, they don't necessarily know that they're in the middle of the burnout at first. There's typically signs and starting to experience different symptoms. Um, but it's pretty easy to just kind of push those to the side and continue to grind out. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was in a situation where I was pushing a lot of friends and family away and continuing to just schedule more work and take on more projects and take on more hours to the point where I was working 60 to 70-hour weeks, like 7 days a week, for almost 3 years straight, um, working through holidays and special events and very meaningful times that I am never going to get back, to be quite frank. And one of those situations was going through the hardship of losing my father. And I just continued to bury myself into work and spent my weekends filling my schedule as much as I could with clients. And To me, a full schedule had become the distraction from what was actually happening around me. As my
Mm.
life started to fall apart, my health started to deteriorate. As I had mentioned, a lot of my relationships kind of disappeared. And it wasn't until I was neglected that schedule. It was particular weekend. My father had passed, and a lot of people were traveling, and I was unable to find people to connect with and to fill that schedule. And having that little bit of downtime opened the window for reflection, and that's when I began to pay a little bit of attention to what was going on around me, and uh, gave me that opportunity to take that step back to then take 2 steps forward into changing my life, because I wasn't happy with where I was at. And it was that little bit of reflection that allowed me to start to brainstorm and figure out where I wanted to pivot and how I wanted to get myself out of this burnout. And I'm quite frankly, I'm lucky about it too, because not too many people can get through the burnout and get through a lot of these challenges when
Yeah,
they're unaware of them in the first place.
definitely. Thanks for sharing this, Rob. So Amber, I'll come to you. Your journey from being a high achieving attorney to success architect is definitely inspiring. So how do you recognize that burnout was affecting your life, and what was your turning point towards reflecting the redefining the success for yourself?
Well, I assume you're looking for a different answer than I had a full-on mental breakdown, but I can't give you one, unfortunately. It's interesting listening to Rob talk because I resonate with so much of what he says.
Mm.
And I was very similar. I lost my dad at the age of 18, and that was a turning point in my life. And it wasn't a turning point because of his loss, although it was incredibly damning to me and my future. He was the 10th funeral I had been to by the age of 18. Like, I had just learned that people don't stick around and relationships aren't worth building. And I don't think I realized until after I was on the other side of my healing journey how
Yeah.
much my belief that people are just going to leave affected every relationship I built personally and professionally. And it went back all the way to the age of 7. My first experience with death was at the age of 7 when my cousin committed suicide. My uncle committed suicide at 14. My dad died at 18. And then various health related in the middle. But I am the oldest and the first one to go to college. And anybody out there that's listening to this knows that when people have never been in your shoes, they're the first to tell
Mhm.
you how to live your life. And so everybody made sure they let me know that if I took time off to grieve from my dad's death, that I would never go back and I'd end up living in my small town in Idaho. And this, I couldn't think of anything that resembled hell more than living in an 1,800 person town, um, and and not having the success behind that. So for about let's see, 2001, about 8 years, I failed classes. I didn't take any time off to grieve. I ended up failing out of undergrad at Idaho State, and that was really my turning point of this is not the life I wanted.
Mhm.
So I put my head down and I thought, what is going to make all of this pain go away? And to me, it was a law degree and a six-figure income. And anybody out there who has ever tied their self-worth to some external accomplishment knows how that ends, and it's not pretty. So I put my head down. I went to law school. I graduated at the top of my class, came to Vegas, passed the bar on my first attempt. I was so committed to making sure that I did everything I needed to do to make the pain stop. Um, in 2016, I had been practicing for 4 years as an attorney, and I hit my first six-figure income. And 3 months after I found out that I hit six figures, I started having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, because nothing changed. I had everything that was supposed to take the pain away, and nothing changed. And very similar to what Rob said, I kept myself incredibly busy. I had so many hobbies. I had very little downtime. People asked me when I was going to take time to slow down. And I kept saying, no, I'm good. Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? That was one of my favorite phrases. And what I didn't realize was that I hated who I was. I didn't like if I slowed down and if
Yeah.
I stopped running, then I had to face the things that were in my head when I was alone, and I wasn't ready to do that yet. And so when Rob talks about, staying busy and constantly accomplishing things and not being able to slow down, that very much is my journey.
Hmm. Understood. Thanks, Amber, for sharing this. And regarding the mindset, mastering of the mindset and the resilience. Um, so I'll come to Rob. You emphasize the importance of the resilient mindset in your coaching. So, uh, what, according to you, are the key strategies that you recommend for building and maintaining the resilience, especially in the high pressure environments?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I oftentimes, with a lot of my workshops and clients, I refer back to this resilience matrix that I've kind of created. And it's a little tool that I like to use with people to kind of gauge where you're currently at with different challenges that you're experiencing, and choosing to go through. Because I feel like in order to build resilience, you need to constantly challenge yourself with appropriate challenges. And then I like to refer everything back to um, kind of like diamonds, like forming diamonds. So they're shiny, they're strong, resilient, and they're incredibly difficult to create. So they require a lot of heat and a tremendous amount of pressure. And because of my background is in strength and conditioning, and it's easy for me to refer back to athletics and training in the gym and things like that. So anytime I'm working with somebody, we kind of set up this graph to kind of see where they fall on the amount of physical pressure that they're putting themselves through. So that could be just in terms of types of activities or types of adventures and their level of activity, and figuring out where they fall on this matrix. Because too much pressure, if they're working themselves, working out multiple times a week or multiple times a day, and just really over crushing themselves, that's going to leave them depleted and unable to kind of show up in situations that they might need to throughout entrepreneurship. And then on the opposite side of that is the heat aspect of creating the diamonds. And this is where I want to go through and look at what each individual is kind of challenging themselves in the mental or cognitive kind of world. Are they taking on new challenges? Or do they enjoy different puzzles and practices? And are they are they open to trying new hobbies and learning new skills and different things? And some people that might be picking up a new language, and others that could just be doing a daily puzzle with some friends. But kind of figuring out where you're currently at, and then taking a step back to analyze how we're currently handling, and where do we grade ourselves currently on that resilience matrix, and how do we need to move, because there's a lot of ups and downs. And if you're not prepared to handle a lot of this different pressure and heat, it can leave you crumbled, and that can affect how you perform in the entrepreneurial world. So using these steps and a couple of these strategies, kind of plotting yourself, you can work yourself to improve where you might find would be the best to kind of move to.
Understood. Understood. Yeah. So Amber, like, I'll come to you. Your book, "Break Your Bullshit Box." So it talks about overcoming limiting beliefs. So, uh, what mindset shifts do you find, or according to you, are the most crucial for the professional who feel stuck in their careers and the personal lives?
I'm just going to start saying ditto after Rob talks because I feel like we're the same person.
Okay.
For me, we are the person that we lie to ourselves. So, this is why having an incredible circle of people that will look at you and be like, I know you're saying these words right now, but it's also kind of bullshit. Those are such valuable people to have. And I often make a comment that I can tell how ready I am to deal with a problem based on who I call to talk about it, right? Because I have my friends that'll like validate all the crap I feel and sit in my pity party with me. And then I have my friends that'll be like, listen, this is not the place that you call for sympathy. Like, what are we going to do to get out of this? So, having this incredible group of people is so important to make sure that you have somebody to call that will push back. Because if, well, entrepreneurs, in general are really good at convincing people that what they believe is what is actually going on. And so we can defend our limitations to the best of them. Kind of talking about what Rob was leaning into. So I mentioned that I suffered from panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and it was the first time it ever happened in my life that I couldn't work. I was so good at compartmentalizing, and when I got kind of back into my regular routine, I started thinking I was okay again, because you get inside this comfort zone and the panic calms down and you're like, see, like this calm version of me is the real version, not this crazy person that couldn't breathe and hyperventilated in a hotel room for 4 days. Like
Yeah.
that, I don't know who that was, but it wasn't me. And I got very blessed that a friend of mine called me and invited me to go work out in the park with them shortly after my panic attack started. And I remember looking at him and saying, you just said workout and park, that's outside, and physical activity. And both of those are places that I don't go. So I don't know what you want me to do with this. And he says, just come hang out with me. That workout in March of 2016 led to running my first obstacle course race in 2017, which led to 25 obstacle course races and a 24-hour race called World's Toughest Mudder in November of 2017. And this is where the idea of physical fitness and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone holds a special place to my heart, because it was in that journey that I started to realize that I can't run my own business was bullshit. I started to realize that I'll never be able to be an entrepreneur, that I always need to be an attorney. That's the only place I'm valuable. If I'm challenging, I can't run 5 miles, and then a year and a half later, I'm running 30 miles in a 24-hour race, what else am I lying to myself about? So similarly, I encourage my clients constantly to push themselves physically out of their comfort zone, because that's the place we see it the most. I can talk to you about being uncomfortable, and that's
Yeah.
great, but what does that mean when it's not tangible? When we're doing physical fitness and physical environments, there is a very real conversation we can have that says, last time I ran this race, I couldn't jump an 8-foot wall. Now I can. Like you get to have a tangible conversation. And I want to just highlight a book called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. If you guys haven't read that, it's incredible. And there's a conversation about comfort zones in that book that changed the way I think about them. I used to talk about getting out of your comfort zone, and it was this non-tangible, non-definable conversation of feeling uncomfortable. And people would say, oh, I push myself out of my comfort zone all the time. You'd be like, yeah, when? And they're like, well, when I feel comfortable. And I'm like, then you're not out of your freaking comfort zone. Like, pushing
Yeah.
yourself out of your comfort zone when you feel comfortable is the definition of in your comfort zone. And so Jen has a comment in her book, and it says, the walls of my comfort zone were lovingly decorated with a lifetime of my favorite excuses. And it was the first time that I ever saw a comfort zone as this like room that I live in with all of my excuses peppering the wall like my favorite pieces of art. And there's this whole world on the outside of that room, and all I have to do is walk out of it. But nobody
Yeah.
can come get me. Nobody can open the door. Like, I have to take those steps. So whenever I start hearing myself say excuses, whenever I start saying the I can't, whenever I start saying the that's not for me, or I'm not that person, I know that I am like knee deep on the couch of my comfort zone, and it's time for me to do something physically that can show me that I'm stronger than I think I am.
Lovely. That's I really love that. Yeah. We actually need to take that step ahead. Yeah, for sure. Lovely. And so also one more thing is coming to my mind, like we all know about this, the intentional consumption. So like it's nothing but about how we are choosing mindfully, that or what we allow into our life. So it could be anything: the food we eat, the media, people surrounding with us, or anything. So and most important thing is, in today's fast-paced world, we are constantly bombarded with the information, opinions, everything. So without intentionally, it's easy to get overwhelmed, distracted from our true purpose. So I mean, but definitely, I believe intentional consumption helps. So I'll come to Rob. Like, uh, as you talk about or you advocate about the intentional consumption, so whether it's the information, food, energy, how does this principle play a role uh, to enhance the entrepreneurial performance and the overall well-being, if you can share?
Yeah, I like to think of it as the fuel, and you're traveling down this road. So
Mhm.
you're trying to get to wherever your goals are, and you're currently at
Yeah.
that point. And driving down the road is pretty. It's your rate. You go at the speed that you're going, and the types of food. I kind of break this into your meals and the media that you're consuming,
Hmm.
because the types of food that you're consuming help create the structure of the vehicle, how well it efficiently moves, and how fast it goes too. So I like to revert back to the nutritional world and talking about how like proteins that you consume dictate the structure, the healthy fats dictate how well oiled the machine works, and the quality of the carbohydrates that you consume dictates the grade of the fuel that your vehicle is using to propel you forward. But like you want to be intentional with it because you can't just be all or nothing. You can't just be all in the same boat and just eating pure the best thing in the world, because then you lose a little bit about yourself. You don't get to enjoy yourself as much. So there's got to make sure that you have that balance and understanding and awareness of what you're consuming, and as long as it's aligned with your goals to help you get down the road. Now, the flip side to that, though, is the media that you're consuming, and it's just like that car analogy that I was using a minute ago. Now, the media is what you're viewing with your eyes, so that
Hmm.
could be books, it could be social media, it could be television, podcasts, even whatever kind of audio or visual
Yeah.
information you're consuming. Think of it like the windshield of your vehicle. Social media is great for a lot of things, but it often gets a bad rep now for a lot of doom scrolling and wasting time and getting stuck on that. So I like to think of it like the bugs in the dirt that's you're driving down the road that splashes up onto your windshield. And when that happens, you can wash it away with your wipers and your washer fluid. And you can think of the washer fluid and the wipers as kind of like your motivational and your educational stuff. It's good to sprinkle in like a good book where you can learn a little bit of things, a great podcast here and there, and it kind of clears your vision and gets you back on track so you continue driving down the road to wherever your goals may be. But at the same time, you can get caught in a terrible, terrible rainstorm. And it's the kind of rainstorm that pours down so bad that it's your wipers are flashing back and forth as fast as possible, but you still can't see the road. So what happens? You got to slow down, put your hazards on, and you have to go at a much slower, cautious rate. And that too is like when you overkill with too much of a good or positive thing. And there was a situation where I had flipped my script and I was in this super grind mode again, just consuming so much content, so much books and podcasts and different courses and going to different conferences. And I was just consuming, 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 just like that rainstorm. But I wasn't implementing any action, and it really was slowing down a lot of things that I was trying to go. So
Yeah.
you gotta have that intentional aspect, and you have to be able to have that second to kind of step back and be aware of what's going on, what you're eating and what you're consuming digitally, so that you can go at the rate that's appropriate to you. And knowing that if you're not moving at a pace that you find fast enough, there are things that you can do to help speed that up. And there are other things for you to make sure you slow down and you're taking the right turns and really enjoying the journey too, because I'm a huge, I mean, a lot of people look at my background in strength and conditioning and nutrition, but they don't know that I'm actually a meatball eating championship. I just placed second place in a donut eating competition 2 months ago. So I love my food, but it's that intentional aspect of it that keeps me aligned so that I'm fueling myself correctly to move towards my goals.
Lovely. That's really lovely. Yeah.
So thank you.
So I'll come to Amber. Like for the same thing for you. Like how has the intentional consumption of both the media and the experiences helped you in your journey from law to success architect. Like, if you can share some of the practical tips for the listeners, like how to be more intentional in their daily lives.
Yeah. So this is really where my background in NLP becomes incredibly valuable. So I train NLP here in Vegas. And what people don't realize is that you have been programmed your entire life
Mhm.
and you're continuing to allow yourself to be programmed by everything that you consume. And there's so much to be said about intentionality of everything, not just what you consume, but also what you do in your actions. So much so that we talk about what success means to you in particular actions that you're taking. So when I do my calendaring for the day, or I create my task lists for the day, I actually look at it and say, like, what does success mean to me in these particular tasks that I'm taking on? What's the purpose of these being on my calendar? What of my goals that I set for the calendar or for the quarter or for the year, which one of those do these tasks particularly relate to, and how do I expect them to impact those tasks? And then when I have downtime, I have downtime.
Mhm.
Our brain is, and this is kind of what I want people to hear and take from this part of the conversation, is that our brains are incapable of telling the difference between fiction and reality. It's not possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't care to go. I mean, I just watched the new Deadpool Wolverine movie. Nothing about that movie is reality. So if we cared about the difference between fiction and reality, there is no way it would hold our attention for two and a
Mhm.
half hours, right? So your brain or your life is the same way. When you sit down and you binge watch because you really believe that you are in a TV show with somebody, when you cry because an actor dies, like, that is your programming of what you think is possible, what you think you should do or be, or what relationships should be like. This is a huge one for me. I'm going to say this with a little bit of jest and a little bit of truth. I hate Disney. I hate them.
Okay.
And Hallmark, because it has totally changed the way that we think that relationships and life should be, right? Think about every single Hallmark movie you've ever seen. There's the high school sweethearts
Mhm.
that break up, and then one goes off and lives their life in the big city, and then they come back to the pumpkin farm, and then they fall back in love with their high school boyfriend that's married to somebody else, and they got to break up that relationship, and there's all this conflict. So it creates for us the idea that if something's easy, it's not worth doing. It
Mhm.
creates the reality that somebody needs to fight for you, or that you need to fight for what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to look at the areas of their life that they don't have everything they want, and pay attention to what they're watching and what they're setting their standards by. If, for me, I never wanted kids. I never really cared to have the traditional family. So if I judged my relationship status and my family status based upon what society and the world is telling me creates a family, I would fail miserably. So you get to decide what each part of your relationship means. The other side of it, and this is the part of our industry that I despise, and I'm gonna um, I have a feeling based on what Rob said that he'll agree with me, but I won't put words in his mouth. Um, some of the problems with social media and this positivity trend that we're on right now is
Mhm.
that it makes you feel like you're wrong for not being okay. It makes you feel like there's this toxic positivity that has this idea that if you are having a shitty thought, just have a better one because it's so simple. Just think more positive. And it just doesn't exist that way, because you can turn it around with your words and you can say, "Oh, I'm supposed to have a positive thought. Like, I'm supposed to think my life's perfect right now." But what goes on in your physiology and your neurology and your thought process before those words leave your mind or leave your mouth is all, something's not right with my life. This is why I don't think affirmations work. I don't like affirmations. The stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself until you believe it. All that does is convince yourself that you can't be trusted because you're saying things that you don't believe. Instead, we get to get really, really curious about why you don't think that you deserve to love yourself. And we need to deal with those things so that
Mhm.
we can start having conversations about you actually saying that you love yourself and you believe it. Right. So this intentionality applies to both sides of like when you feel good, but also when you don't, and knowing that it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to not to like stay there, right? One of my favorite water bottles I ever got in an event said nobody ever drowned from falling in the water. They drowned by staying there.
Wow. So also I believe the networking, luck creation, seizing the opportunities are also very important. So I'll come to Amber first. Like so I mean, networking is often definitely seen as the critical for all the success, be it professional or anything. So how I mean, how have you used networking to advance your career, and what advice would you give to someone who struggles with making this kind of genuine connections?
Yeah. So I'm gonna there's two different answers to this depending on where I'm at in my life. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of people that will resonate with the first version of me,
Mhm.
which is that relationships aren't worth building. Try networking when you don't want to build relationships. It doesn't work, right? I felt so transactional, and I am the least transactional person on the planet. I care about people so much, but I couldn't let them know that, because then I need them and then I'm weak and then they're just going to disappear and they're going to go away. And then, like, I'm going to be stuck here with myself that is left alone again. That's what abandonment feels like. When you have abandonment tendencies because people in your life have let you down. Now, let me give you the caveat: they died, they didn't just leave, right? But your brain doesn't understand. All your brain knows is that this person that I loved was here and now they're not, and I must have done something to make that happen. So for me, I spent the majority of my career in a legal industry where networking was being at the courthouse about ready to do a hearing and talking to attorneys there. I didn't network the same way as an attorney that I do as a coach. So I didn't realize I had these connection problems until I started networking as a coach and networking as a trainer. Because as an attorney, people immediately trust you. They walk in your office, they need you, there's a respect, they immediately trust you. As a coach, they immediately distrust you because they have been burned so many times. And then on top of that, we're asking people, when somebody comes to me and says, I want to make more money, I'm like, sweet, what was your relationship like with money as a kid? And they're like, we're not having that conversation. I said, then you don't want to make more money, right? If
Mhm.
we're asking people to go to the deepest and darkest places that they have hidden from the world for such a long time. And I can't just walk into a room and be like, I'm an attorney, you'll respect me, let me keep you out of jail. There's relationship building that goes along with that. The biggest mistake I see people make when it comes to networking is thinking that the networking breakfast that they went to is where networking begins and ends. And one of the best things I was ever told by my mentor is there's a difference between networking and net connecting. And when you go to a chamber event or a networking event and you collect a stack of business cards you're probably never going to look at again, that's net connecting. You're meeting people, you're connecting with them. The networking part of it comes in the relationships that you build after. How are you inviting them out to places? Who are you connecting them with? How are you showing them that you care about them as a person and their business as a whole, and that relationship should be reciprocal? And I'm gonna get super scientifically deep here for just a second. There's these things in our brain called meta programs, and this is basically the DNA code for every human being. Everybody has them. Outside of values, they are our second deepest unconscious programming. And when you can understand these things, you know exactly what somebody needs. And what I mean by that, there's 27 or 30 of them. I have a checklist of them, so I don't have the exact number in front of me. But what I'm talking about when I say meta programs is, how do they need to be reassured of things? How often do they need to be reassured of things? Do they need feedback by telling them that did a good job, or do they just know they did a good job? So when we're talking about convincing somebody that we are a person that they should align with, each person needs to be convinced a certain number of times that you are somebody they can trust, and it's different for each person. So
Mm.
as you learn about them and get to know them, you'll find some people that lean in immediately and say, I automatically trust you until you give me a reason not to. Then there are other people that say, I will never fully trust you no matter what you do. And then there's the people in the middle that will say, at some point in time, I'll learn to trust you, but you haven't earned it yet. So networking is all about earning that trust so that you can then build the relationship on the other side.
Lovely, lovely. And I'll immediately come to Rob. Like, you also mentioned about the luck creation as one of the core principles for you. So, how can the entrepreneurs actively create their own luck? And so, what do you say?
Yeah. To me, it comes down to that equation that I'm sure you guys have heard before, where luck
Mhm.
is just when preparation meets opportunity. And I believe in that super, super heartfully. And like, you can prepare, you can prepare, and you can prepare, but if you're not putting yourself out and opening yourself up and being available to opportunity, then you're just going to be stuck kind of preparing for something that'll never come. So a lot of my principles and a lot of the work that I do is in that preparation game. But then it's also about trying to figure out where and how you can connect with others, and getting into different situations and making sure that you show up to help others create opportunity. And I love what Amber was saying about the net connecting versus the networking. And I totally believe in that too. It's when going out and you're meeting new people, I think the first thing to do is to try to figure out how you can provide value to somebody else and how you can help them create opportunity. Because if they see that you're helping them and you're truly interested in them, then they're going to come back and hopefully pay it back forward to you. And I feel like making sure that you're prepared and then setting yourself up to be available for any opportunities that could be out there.
Lovely, lovely. Great. So, so before we wrap, like, this is to both of you. Like, uh, what are some of the daily practices or maybe the routines that uh, you would recommend for the continuous personal and the professional growth? So, I mean,
Amber, you want to
any
take?
idea about that?
Do you want to go first, Rob, or do you want me to?
You can go. I
Okay.
would go for one for
So,
one.
right. So for me, I'm going to steal your word of intentionality. For me, intentionality is so key. And I mentioned that, I talk about success. It's actually behind me. This is why I sit here, right? Talk about success and people, we all know that person who has said something just doesn't feel right to me. Like, I've worked so hard to get to where I'm at in my career and it just doesn't feel right. I don't know what's missing in my life. It can't be my job because that's my whole identity. It can't be my relationship because that's my whole identity. So I'm going to make all of these other little changes in my life. It's what we've come to know as a midlife crisis, right? They go buy the flashy new car. They're trying to do anything that makes them feel good about themselves. And then when that doesn't work, they're like, God, maybe it is my relationship. So now I'm single, and I'm still unhappy. Maybe it is my job. So now I'm unemployed and single and still unhappy. And then next thing you know, they're living the van life because now it's got to be their location, right? How many of these things do we change before we realize that we are the common denominator and that we get to take our role in creating our own happiness? So when I talk about intention and success, the first question I ask my clients is, this thing that you're working so hard for, whatever it is, what do you think it's going to bring you? What do you think
Mhm.
it's going to provide? Because I promise you, if the answer to that is respect, love, even if they say money, what's the purpose of the money? Because I promise nobody's ever wanted to make $1 million just so that they can carry around $1 million. There's something that money represents. So I go super, super deep in this conversation of success, of what is it that you think what you're working so hard for right now is going to provide for you, and making sure that there's no illusions, that nothing is going to change about the way that you feel about yourself when you have the six-figure income, when you have the perfect relationship. You get to know that you're solid and deal with the trauma that you get to deal with, so that when you have the relationship, the money, the success, the career, that you can actually pour into that instead of taking from it. And anybody who's a comedy fan, I'll send you this, and if you want to put it in the show notes, you can. But there's a comedian by
Okay.
the name of Taylor Tomlinson who did a whole skit about people not knowing how to swim and
Okay.
jumping in a pool and requesting that other people save them.
Hmm.
And she says, it's not a problem to not know how to swim. What it is a problem is to jump into the deep end of the pool knowing that you can't swim and make it everybody else's problem to save you. And then you make your relationship your floating device, and that's not a fair relationship to your spouse, right? It's perfect on this issue of we look for career, relationships, money to save us or fix us instead of actually provide a win-win relationship too. So the piece of advice that I have for somebody is get really, really intentional. What are you working so hard for, and what do you think it's going to bring you? When you look at what's on your calendar and your schedule, and if you say, I don't have a calendar or schedule, that's your first problem. Get one of those. And then look at what's on it and look at the reason. I know the purpose of every single thing I do every single day. And sometimes, to Rob's point, the purpose is I need some downtime and some self care. Sometimes the purpose is I'm not talking to anybody today because I need a mental health day. And sometimes the purpose is I'm going to make some really cool connections. I'm going to give some good advice to somebody on a podcast interview. I'm going to make sure that I'm, doing some income generating opportunities. You cannot change your schedule and create different results in your life if you don't know where you're spending your time.
Perfect. Exactly true. Yeah. So Rob.
Boom. Yeah, so I will kind of piggyback off of your intentionality there, and I'll go with a making sure to also follow a reflection practice. I'm a big fan of gratitude, and I don't just keep it all in the positive though. You were kind of hinting at earlier about some other things, how like it's not always necessarily being affirmations and just and less negative, all positive. Because I like to also look at the negative situations or things that don't go the way that I intended, and try to find that silver lining. Because I feel like I don't remember exactly what the quote is, but it's something along the lines of can't fully embrace or enjoy the sun if it never rains. So making sure that I reflect on, hey, how did I do this past week? How did I do yesterday? How did I do this past month? I like how things went. Did things go the way that I wanted to? Were there things that I could have changed, or what are some things that I need to kind of change going forward, so that I can set my schedule up to make sure that I'm moving forward in the whichever intentional where I'm going, whether it's a content creation or a revenue generating little season, but making sure that I reflect on the previous season, or the season being just a short period of time that I dedicated for certain other aspects, or if I need to get out there and start connecting and networking more. So having that little bit of reflection practice so that I can then take my intentionality moving forward and kind of continue to grow and make sure that I keep knocking down the different things that I want to, and I'm helping others achieve the things that they're looking to.
I love that. I want to follow up on that really quickly because I don't know where they got this number from. I'm not the neuroscientist that came up with the data. But the last number I heard was 90% of our thoughts are things that we don't want. So if we're not implementing a gratitude practice, it's so easy for us to buy into the negative stuff in our life
Mhm.
and to think that there's so many things that go wrong. So I'm a huge proponent of gratitude as well. In fact, if I was to turn my camera around, that's the sign that sits on the other side of my wall is gratitude. But I wanted to point that out because I do think that if we don't take the time to be thankful for what good things happened, our brain automatically starts looking for problems to solve in our life. And then we just think we're a dumpster fire.
Hmm.
Perfect, perfect, definitely true. Great, great. So thank you so much everyone for tuning into this episode of Healthy Babes, and I believe like it's been an incredible journey exploring those powerful strategies with our two incredible guests, Rob and Amber. So Dear listeners, like, remember that the key to thriving any high pressure environment is which is lies in mastering the mindset, being intentional about your actions, and also at the same time staying resilient through the challenges. So I hope you have gained the valuable insights today that you can apply to your own life and the business. And do not forget to subscribe, share this episode with someone who could benefit from it, and join us next time as we continue to deep dive into the waves of success and the well-being. So this is your host Avik signing off from Healthy Waves, and keep riding those waves. So thank you so much.